Welcome everyone to another developer interview chat here on Game Wisdom for our Perceptive podcast series. We have another guest for tonight who is working on an indie project, and we're going to chat with them a little bit about that and about what they are up to. So my guest is currently working on the 3D platformer Robo Maid. This is one of the games I had a chance to look at when I was out at Mag West. So please welcome to the channel, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
It is great to have you on. Thanks for reaching out or being interested. I've been trying to follow with everyone from MagWest, so it is always great to chat with developers. Mike has a bit of the sun is blinding in from the background there, but hopefully that should
Yeah.
be fine. Usually these cats, the sun will rise and fall by the time we're done with them, but it's great to have
Yeah.
you on.
hmm
So, to get things started, can you talk a little bit about kind of who you are and what is Robo Maid?
Uh, yeah, my name's, Michael. Most people call me Mikey. I run the Mike Motion YouTube channel, hence the name. Uh, I grew up in North Carolina, currently living in Colorado, and I uh, you know, I remember how I got into video games, like playing video games. To explain a bit about myself,
Hmm.
I went over to my cousin's house in New Jersey because all my family's from New Jersey. Um, and and it played Super Smash Brothers Brawl with him on the Wii, and that got me really into gaming. Before then, I played my dad's uh, NES and
Hmm.
Genesis, but that's really got me into gaming. And then you know, it devolved into the Robo Maid years later because it got me into interested in retro gaming eventually. Once I turned a mid teenager, and so that got me into playing games like Mega Man Legends, or uh, older '90s games. Um, but yeah, that's how I started in my journey with games, and I'm still kind of addicted to them. Like
Hmm.
last night, I just binged Red Dead Redemption 2 Epilogue because I was so I need to beat it. I haven't beat the epilogue. I beat the main game, but not the epilogue. Um, but I like working out. Just go back to change it back to the point of the question. I like working out. I like, I like cooking to work out, but I like playing video games. I've been working on indie development and stuff for since the pandemic of March.
Hmm.
So I've done a few different projects which I could show off later in the discussion as well. Robo Maid, I think, is my fourth or third, it's be my fourth indie game that actually came out. So,
Okay.
I mean, of course, I'm saying it's going to come out, but yeah, I have high hopes for this product, which I'll get into later.
So, for people listening, what's kind of the elevator pitch for Robo Maid?
Uh, Imagine Mega Man Legends, but it's about cleaning dungeons instead of destroying robots in the dungeons. So mixed in with a charming art style, and then a story that's gonna devolve into more darker themes later on in the chapters. That's how I would describe it really fast.
And how long have you been working on Robo Maid for? Or
Uh, s-
yeah.
since March of this year, so I think
Okay.
that's 8 months
Okay.
if I'm if my math checks out of my head.
Hmm. And you said that you kind of started game dev during the pandemic. So
hmm
or I guess what attracted you to some of the genres that you wanted to work in?
To bring it back to more about myself, I used to do stop motion when I was a teenager before I got really into games, and then eventually I stopped. You know, between me getting into games and then a friend of mine, which I worked with before, said like, "Oh hey, like you're into animation stop motion stuff. You should do CGI stuff." And I was already interested in doing CGI. This is like 2019. And I was like, oh, so I took a lot of my things I learned from animation from that, like the very basics of animation, like very basic, into learning CGI. And because CGI was like making low poly models, which I was interested also at the time, was easier to do. I got in introduced into the CGI process by doing low poly models, and that devolved. Um, but the question was, what got you into gaming? Uh, Basically, as I was learning CGI, all my friends were indie devs and like online. So I was like, hey, why not you just make this model for my game I'm working on? And I'm already doing low poly stuff, and I'm interested in retro games, like playing them, of course, legally through emulation. Um, so it just kind of devolved from there. Like my love for animation and modeling basically being used for my friends' indie projects, and then that devolved into like uh, my own projects.
I'm also a big fan of stop motion. I've played quite a few games that have had that, like the Dream Machine, and
Mm-hmm.
this year was Harold Halibut. And it is a very fascinating one to look at. I think there's another one, Judero, which is like a very interesting action game that came out that also makes use of it. But yeah, it's always great when we see games that use like very interesting art styles with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a bit of the like I'm interested in art styles and animation and modeling and world building stuff. So, that's what my specialty is in when it comes to video games. So then it's nice to have other people on the project that's like interested in game level design
Hmm.
and programming more. So we balance each other out, like on this project.
Hmm. So, what kind of attracted you in terms of like the actual design of Robo Maid to make like kind of like a Mega Man Legends style gameplay?
Uh, it's how to explain it. I've always like casually played a lot of the Mega Man Legends games, but for some reason, something about Mega Man Legends always hooked me in. Like I'm talking about mainly the first one, even though I have obviously played Trombone in the second one.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's like the anime ness of it. I don't know the better word for it because I'm a big weeb, I'm a big anime enjoyer. Um, like that mixed with the low poly like style, but it's also like I don't know. It's very hard to explain, but like I remember as a teenager just like playing Mega Man Legends over and over. It's like Mario 64, that game, Buzz Lightyear to the rescue. Uh, those are the first kind of games I kind of emulated, and something about it. It's very charming. It's very kind of it's like fun to play. It's because it's also like my introduction to like a lot of JRPG elements or RPG elements.
Hmm.
So it's like I don't know, but mixed in with third person shooting, which is one of my favorite genres. You know, it's a lot of something hooked me in, so that's why eventually I was like, oh, I'll make a game like this. But it's more of a chicken and the egg situation where I was like obsessed with the art style. So then I started to make
Hmm.
a YouTube channel, videos, and then it kind of spiraled from there. So it wasn't as much like, oh, I love this gameplay. I want to make a game. It was just like, oh, this art style is so good. I'm going to make a video based on it. because like what happened was at the beginning of the project, I had this idea for a long time ever since I met like my my team I'm working with now, who are also my like friends and gaming
Mm-hmm.
buddies. Um, like the programmer and level designer, and the programmer was like, "Oh, you should make that. You should make that a video because in the past I already messed around with making the model with
Mm-hmm.
the Robo Maid as well as like the foyer. So it was stuff like that. So then it was like make it an animation, and then that did the best video on my channel, what I recall. So then I kept doing it for fun, but also to like just I have something to do
Mm-hmm.
because I was like at the time looking for jobs or whatever. Also, I think two of the animations I was like visiting for the holidays, my parents. The the Christmas one I made, and then the like what's it called? It's like married the maid like dreaming or something, and then the rats appear. Like those two, I was like visiting for the holidays, I think. Um, but then I made uh, what's it called? I made like the church one, which was really dumb. Like the concept when the maid asks the father like is he judging her for her riz, and he doesn't understand because he's like 30. He's a boomer.
Mm-hmm.
But that blew up into like 100K views, and that kind of was like uh, inspired my programming friend to start the game because we knew that eventually the fans would want to play like a game out of the animations. So there's a lot of like, well, there's you can see how it kind of wasn't the most intentional. It's just I didn't realize other people loved the Mega Man Legends art style and wanted like Mega Man Legends spiritual successor games.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, again, you never know what people or what will resonate with people these days, and if they went crazy over a kind of like that Mega Man kind of like polygon look,
Hmm.
definitely go run with it.
Yeah, but no, go on. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, so like with like building the game itself, you said you've been working on this since March.
Hmm.
Where I guess like for people listening to us, like what is going to be kind of like the overall gameplay experience? You mentioned, of course, you're going to be like cleaning the house. There's going to be lighthearted story
Hmm.
until it's not. Like, where do you like envision the game going?
Like for the story and gameplay, you
Yeah,
mean?
or just the
Okay,
gameplay if you don't want to spoil anything there.
gotcha. Well, for the gameplay, a lot of it's gonna be like at least the current plan is
Mm-hmm.
going to be imagine there's a dungeon, so there's like the mansion dungeon or world level, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you basically each part of it would be like a different section, and in that section there's a percentage. And again, this could be changing in development, but there's gonna like you have your vacuum, which you could see on the poster, which is like I think it's behind me. Um, and basically cleaning up that percentage of like oil, cobwebs, dust, whatever type of uh dirt. Would each time you clean it, you get money, and by cleaning the whole thing, you get lots of money, and you can spend that money to upgrade in the city because the second world is the overworld, which is uh, gonna have like shops and stuff, and one of the shops would be the bot shop where you can buy upgrades for your vacuum as well as like items like oh I can jump higher or whatever. Uh, and then you're gonna go throughout the world. Like imagine going to another location, like the city for example, and it's like oh the Bellbots they messed up the city because they're attacking it, and since they run on diesel, they're like spreading oil everywhere, so you have to clean that up. So that's kind of the loop. Of course, the city is going to be the main hub, and then there going to be other locations you can go to. So think of like Chibi Robo, how it's like every time you clean something up, you get happy points. It'd be like every time you clean something up, you get coins, or maybe it it could be like an NPC tells you clean this up, you do it, you go to the NPC, get money. We just haven't decided which ones would be better and more satisfying for the player. When it comes to the story, it's basically without spoiling anything because it's been kind of revealed on the channel. It's a feud between the Bell family and the Clockwork family. Clockwork's like wind up and gears, and then the Bell family is like gasoline, coal, and they're fighting over the PMD pod, the perpetual motion machine, uh, because the Clockwork family wants it for their nefarious purposes, and the Bell family wants to destroy it for their nefarious purposes. So uh, that's going to be the driving force in the plot, as well as Mary kind of grappling with her being like a robot in a world of like you know humans are on top socially, and the robots are more below. But she doesn't know where she belongs with that.
Okay.
And there's going to be a lot of new characters that are planned, and not just uh, the Seymour, Eugene, Laura, and Clockwork. However, my goal would be throughout the story, we get a lot of mileage out of the characters. It's like as unless they're just a generic NPC that walks around the city, a lot of the characters you might see multiple times throughout the story, doing different things, moving around. Um, it also gives lets me invest more into exact NPCs instead of rushing that process because it usually takes me a bit.
Okay. And with kind of like the platforming feel, again, we mentioned the Mega Man Legends style. I had a chance to play it
Mhm.
during a MagWest. Are you planning, or are you thinking about like anything like different or unique from that particular style of 3D platforming that you'll put into the game?
Uh, there's a possibility of having like uh, ledge grabbing, which well then again, Mega Man Legends does have that too, but it's gonna be more, I think, platforming focused. Mega Man Legends more dungeon focused, but we're gonna still
Mm-hmm.
have both. So like in Mega Man Legends, a puzzle is very simple at times in the first game.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I'm trying to think of the most advanced puzzle, like the most advanced puzzle with like the um, conveyor belts, moving the chest into like the grinder thing. That's what comes to mind. But we're
Mm-hmm.
probably gonna have more platforming, like jumping around, and uh, just in general. But also the enemies might be more melee based. At least some, yeah, yeah. Some of them are gonna be more melee because Mega Man Legends, a lot of them just shoot you. Some of them
Mm-hmm.
obviously hit you, but it's more they run into you. What I recall. Um, I think that would be the difference. The cleaning mechanic, and then things would be more about jumping around, platforming, and going up and down like dungeons rather than so narrow and so like just go here.
Okay. And I guess with the overall project itself, you mentioned, of course, like earlier before we started, so you don't have an actual store page up for it. The
Mm.
demo that I played at MagWest, is that available somewhere, or will that be like going up at some point in the future?
That'll be going up some point in the future. Yeah.
Okay.
We want the official launch of like at least half of the first part of chapter one or season one, whatever you want to call it, because the game's divided into three parts.
Hmm.
Uh, to be like free from bugs and like polished and done. and then to be enough content to play. Because like for the MagWest demo, there was the tutorial and a lot of the things was polished and done. But not, there's more polish to be made, but a lot of it was done. But then the mansion for the you know online public release, you want that to be like completely done, polished, and so you don't like open up a demo and it's like, oh, I played 5 minutes of it.
Mm-hmm. And I guess to go back to some of the other projects that you've worked on, what are some of the other like games that you've made so far?
Yeah. So the first game, and all these games I made with other people here and there, it was called High Rise. I think it's still up on radcade.com, but I don't know with the Flash shenanigans if it still works or not.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, you're a window washer and you climb up a skyscraper, and it's endless. It's just about getting enough points. I like that game. I feel like it's very quaint. Um, Again, that's like High Rise from radcade.com. Um, the second game was a game called Sanctified, and that's on itch. Uh, so you can play that. That demo's out. Uh, Basically, the full game got postponed indefinitely, but maybe one day I'll go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a Silent Hill survival horror game about exorcism stuff. So that was pretty cool. And then the third game is mobile only, which is called, I think it's Mind Venture or like Mindscape. It's about a frog going into people. I think it's like we never really had a hard canon for the story, but it's about a frog going into these weird worlds. Um, like there's like a grass biome. There's like a kitchen. There's a castle, and then there's like a lava biome. That's a simple 3D platformer. The idea was you can play it with like one hand. So like if you're on the BART or something, you could just like, or any subway, you could just be like holding on to it and like playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only on uh Apple and Android. Okay, then the third game that I published, I mean not published, but worked on with other guys, uh, is Mind Venture. You're a frog. You're going through weird different biomes. Like there's a castle, there's a
Mm-hmm.
kitchen, there's grass, land, and then there's like lava um biome. Uh, that's like a simple 3D platformer. The idea is that you could play on like one hand in the subway or BART if you're from the West Coast, and then you could play on on that with one hand. So that was pretty cool. All these games I've learned like a lot from, and I'm using that experience in Robo Maid, which again is the working title. It might get a new title later on. Um, yeah. So like um, from Mind Venture, what did I learn from that? I guess like communication skill, like better like, improving my communication skills and kind of pacing the project. Um, And then for the Sanctified game, I learned a lot of like, don't, how to explain it? Don't be overly ambitious as an indie dev. And like, you have to kind of assume that things are going to take twice as long as that you expect, and you have to cut back. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't, the game's either going to be in production hell, never come out, or come out in a terrible state.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And like the regulars here on my channel, we know all about stuff like that here, just from all the talks. I guess
Mhm.
like for like your overall like style of game dev, like as you're talking about games you've made in the last few years, like very different like genres, very different takes. So, are there any like
Mm.
particular genres that you particularly like to work with, or some that you would like to make a game in the future?
Huh. Oh, that's a good question. I mean, my favorite, just to start, my favorite like gameplay genres are like 3D platformers, um, platformers in general, and then like third-person shooters. Uh, so like games like Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, uh, Toy Story 2, Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue are some of my favorite 3D platformers. Resident Evil 6, even though the campaign's not that good, but the multiplayer is where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh yeah, Helldivers 2, and then Metal Gear Solid 5, some of my favorite third-person shooters. So that, as well as like combat racing, um, like what's it called? I'm forgetting the name, but it's like Jack's Combat Racing, Jack and Daxter Combat
Yeah.
Racing.
Oh
That one's
man.
really good. And then Speed Racer on the PS2 is also there's some combat in that. So that's that's my biases. What I like the most. Aside, I think the games I like to work on are 3D platformers. I think the game in the future I would like to work on would be a third-person shooter, probably sci-fi. Um, yeah, that would be dope. Also, maybe I don't know if I should double dip into 3D platforming. I just seem to work on 3D platforming a lot, or like platforming games in general. But it'd be nice to make a like Nintendo 64 style 3D platformer instead of this is PS1. So either the PS1 you go for like Silent Hill looking horror stuff, or you go for like platforming games which could be kind of uh, diverse in styles. And I picked more of a anime chibi style for the Robo Maid. Um, yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Either a third-person shooter, that would be what I would most likely want to work on, or some sort of combat racing game.
Okay. I think what's kind of like funny about how like platforming has evolved is that we're now in this period where you can like define your platform based on which console you're thinking of. Because I've played, let's see, I think I played PlayStation 2 style platforming, PlayStation
Hmm.
1. There's a was a Corn or Goat Kids 64 last year or this year. The people watching they'll know which one I'm
Oh
talking
yeah,
about. Yeah.
the level designer loves that game.
Yeah, and it's just like funny to like think about how like so many people are like again like for like older audiences watching this like we're in that period where we all get to feel really old that people are like hey this retro game for the N64 what my parents played.
Yeah, because I think a huge difference between like PS1 platformers and Nintendo 64 platformers. I think a lot of Nintendo 64 platforms are collectathons and more about the platforming,
Mm-hmm.
while PS1, like, I mean, like Crash Bandicoot's about collecting in a way, but I think that's more like action adventure or like about going through the stages.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess Robo Maid, even though we'll have platforming, it's like Mega Man. Well, not like Mega Man. Well, it is. There's gonna be like RPG elements of like collecting money to buy things, and as well as exploring dungeons to defeat the enemies, unlock the key. Well, get the keys to unlock the doors and stuff like that. So it's a mix. It's a it's more like a what do I call it? Like an adventure, action adventure platformer rather than a straight 3D platformer. Technically.
Mm-hmm. And like we've been seeing like a lot of developers have been really taking these like classic designs in interesting directions. One of my favorites
Mhm.
lately was Pseudo Regalia, which was a 3D Metroidvania from last year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've seen gameplay of that. It's
Mm-hmm.
super looks really fun.
Yep. So I guess to begin to wind things down. I guess before we do that, any like design topics you're interested in discussing, whether it's about Robo Maid or about some of your other projects?
Um, I wanted to mention, like, I think this is the time where, like, the how to explain this? In, like, 2000, like, with Cave Story in the 2000s and onwards,
Mm-hmm.
it began the Nintendo 6 sorry, the NES, Super Nintendo kind of retro boom for indie dev stuff. I think we're in that for PS1, Nintendo 64, starting in, like, 2020-ish. So we're in the boom of that for the the retro graphics to emulate that type of style. But of course, we're still gonna have like great indie games for like Genesis looking style or like Super Nintendo or just regular Nintendo. Like the latest thing I could think of is like, is it Alien 52? Like that game I've watched a friend play and that looks really good. And that's a uh, Nintendo Entertainment System style.
Do you mean UFO 50?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but I just think it's fascinating. And the question I would want to raise is, would this continue to next, like later consoles? Are we gonna have retro games in like the Xbox 360, PS2, or does it end here? Because like I don't know how that would even really look like. Because I feel like it's more about gameplay in that generation than
Mm-hmm.
like a particular uniform style due to graphical limitations. So like if someone wants to make like a Jack and Daxter of Sly Cooper 2 esque platformer,
Mm-hmm.
it can have a similar style but it won't be limited to that amount of polygons. Or if someone wants to make like I'm trying to think of Xbox 360 game I've played. Uh, uh I mean I could think of a non Xbox 360 game like DSX. Like if someone makes a DSX game, you know, you just make it. You don't make it. I don't think you would make it retro like PS2y. But what do you think about that, Josh?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really interesting question there about kind of like where, like, it's like that line of nostalgia kind of ends. Because again, like,
Mm,
for like younger people watching this or listening to us right now, like, they grew up during the era of, PlayStation 4, maybe Xbox 360. Like, we were kind of like hitting that phase where, like, at least like photorealism or realism was kind of reaching its peak, or at least in terms of going from, like, again, like for my generation, growing up with the NES and the SNES, like, we
mm.
weren't dealing with realism during that period. So there is that kind of like nostalgia for that period before the 2000s. Like, as you said, like, you look at a PlayStation 2 style game, you know it's a PlayStation 2 style game. Just an
Mm,
N64, a SNES, a Sega Genesis. But when we get to like the 360, PlayStation 3, it's like, yeah, they all kind of like have like that same similar look. Again, like being around
mm.
that period, it's like the whole like military gray and brown period for a lot of those shooters. So
Yeah.
like, it's not that big of a stretch to say if I'm gonna make a first person shooter, if I make it have like a military theme, well, it looks like a Call of Duty or a Battlefield. I do
Mm,
want I don't know, I think like for people like listening to us in the recording right now, I think that's a really good question to get what your thoughts are on that one too. I feel like it is going to hit that line because at some point, like when game technology kind of blew up so or advanced so rapidly, there's not really that I think that sense of nostalgia in terms of like that art style. But
mm,
when you look at stuff like the N64, PlayStation 2, again, like there's a reason why a lot of people consider like PlayStation 2 to be like the golden age for a lot of RPGs, a lot of that stuff because there's
mm,
just so much variety there. And I think that's kind of where we see the nostalgia is that variety of game. Like we've said, like you can talk about platforming and go NES, N64, PlayStation, and that's four completely different like universes of
Mhm.
design. I remember The Messenger from a few years ago, which I really love that for a 2D platform. They did the whole you shift between 8-bit and 16-bit, and it does feel like a completely different like universe when you do it like that. And I don't think you get that same kind of feeling saying, "Oh, we're gonna go from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4." Now maybe PlayStation
Yeah.
5, in like 20, 30 years from now, people will be like talking about nostalgia about PlayStation 5 when we're up to maybe PlayStation 20 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also like I went to some context. I went to a retro gaming store with a friend
Hmm.
in I think it's San Jose, and I noticed that a lot of the PS3 games on the wall were games that I had on Steam. So, or like games that I wanted to play or games I
Hmm.
have played. It had Dead Rising 2. It had like the old Call. I think no, did it have old Call of Duties? I had some. What I remember is Dead Rising 2 standing out on the PS3 wall for the retro store, and it just made me think like maybe in part the reason why people don't have nostalgia for PS3, PS4, PS5 is because like those games keep getting remastered with better graphics.
Hmm.
And even so, I don't think like I mean I'm not a good example of this because some people are very picky when it comes to it looking good and looking high quality graphics or realism. I am not. I'm making a game where it's like cheap anime chibi style. Um, but like we have a lot of the games we love are just getting remade from the PS3 in that generation. So that might be in part why it's hard to have nostalgia for like a remake of a game, or like would anyone really have nostalgia for Demon Souls on the PS5? Like it's
Hmm.
just because but like I don't think there's a Sly Cooper 2 remake. I don't think there's a Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue remake.
Yeah, I
You
think
know.
Yeah, and I think that's like kind of like that issue. Like for someone like the classic games, like they kind of existed in like that specific ecosystem. That if you didn't
Mm,
grow up playing them, there's not really that desire. Like, again, like people will be clamoring for Resident Evil. They'll be clamoring for. I think they just re-released the Tomb Raider games, like major names
yeah.
in franchise. And there's a greater topic about game preservation that I can spend hours raving and raving about that one. But I think a lot of it also is kind of like the budget that you can throw into it. Like, what was the name of it? The studio that is doing the Gold Masters series. I know they just released one. Ooh, let me see if I can look this up really fast. Digital Eclipse. Like they've been like doing like a lot in terms of like making like, probably like, the highest quality in terms of game preservation and game restoration. But it's kind of hard to like say let's give every game that level of treatment. Like I
Mm.
would love to play like a remaster of a game like Plock, or even going like really deep cutting with stuff like Echo the Dolphin, Comic Zone, like Sega Genesis style. But
Oh, Comic Zone. Sorry,
yeah,
you just brought me back to my dad's Sega Genesis collection he had.
yeah, and like I just don't see people, unfortunately, like being excited about that. And
Mm.
like I think the other point about like these kind of classic games is that there's definitely this audience of people who want to like make things bigger and better. Like the entire modding scene with stuff like the Super Mario Kaizo hacks. I've been getting into like stuff from GZ Doom with people doing
Oh
partial and
yeah.
full conversion, and probably what's going to be my most played game of this year is going to be a mod for the original XCOM that I've been enjoying on and off stream. So like that kind of stuff is great, but at the same time, I could never see stuff like this like being like on a storefront like a Resident Evil, or being
Yeah.
featured like a Target, Kmart, Walmart, wherever you go to pick up games these days.
Yeah. No, I love the I haven't done I haven't got into much of Doom modding. like games. I think I played one that was the what was that one? I can't remember, but uh, I've also more I've been more into like the Nintendo 64 modding scene and
Hmm.
Banjo-Kazooie modding scene. Like watching videos. I've played like Star Road. You might have played. That's a Nintendo 64 mod. It's basically like unofficial Mario 64 too. It's really good. Uh, another thing, one thing I forgot to mention earlier. I think just recently Rockstar remastered Red Dead Redemption 1, and that's another example. It came out years ago. Didn't it still looks okay, decent,
Hmm.
but then they remastered it to make it look a bit better. So like you can you know, we're in the kind of remake pre-existing games era. So that's
Hmm.
probably why people get nostalgic for like, older games rather than the status quo.
And I think it, the most like depressing thing about like how much the modding scene has evolved is that I just do not have the time to play them all. Like I'm barely covering all the indie games I'm trying to get to, let alone the
Yeah.
like infinite number of Mario, Doom, and XCOM mods there are. And on
Mm.
top of that, like other ones you mentioned, like I haven't even looked at the Banjo Kazooie scene yet.
Yeah. There's like I'm just happy Banjo-Kazooie's getting love because we're never gonna get Banjo-Kazooie 3. I stand by that. Controversial take. Put it in a YouTube clip, Josh.
Oh. But yeah.
Then it comes out in like 3 years in a egg on my face. But then I can make a reaction. Big brain.
Hmm. Yeah, but
I
yeah, go ahead.
oh there's a pop up on my computer. Um, a question for you, Josh, is that what type of what type of retro gameplay you want to come back? And I'm thinking about this too. That's why I'm asking you first because I'm trying to think. Like, like type of platformer, type of racing game. Of course, we have racing games, we have platformers nowadays, but it's like what style in the sense of gameplay, what mechanics. For me, I think it's like I want more combat racing games. Like,
There's
like
I know there's one of my fans. If he's watching this right now, he's probably nodding his head in agreement because he loves F Zero.
oh yeah, F-Zero's great.
Oh, let's see. I kind of miss like the like action RPG style platforming. There was a game from about 2 years ago called As Libra that came out that I really loved. It was like a passion project. It took like I think like 10 to 15 years. It's like it feels like it's almost like put together like duct tape and glue, and yet it all just like it's one of those games like you either will play for 5 minutes and then never touch it, or you'll sit and play for like the next 60 to 80 hours of this game. And like I think it was supposed to be kind of like the old like a Yeast series, YS. And like that
Mm.
style, I would like to see like more like action RPG with my platform because I've played so much like tech platforming and Kaizo platforming and the Super Meat Boy masochism level platforming. That
Mm.
would be nice to see some more of those.
Yeah. Uh, I feel like I need to pull this up because I've never heard about this game. It's like I'm trying to think. What would be a similar game? Like, would it be like Thief? No, Thief is not platforming.
Hmm. A Mirror's Edge, are you thinking of that one? Or
Oh yeah, yeah. It'll be like, oh, gotcha. Yeah, no, now I get what you want, what you're
Mhm.
leaning towards. Um, yeah. Uh, I'm trying to think of anything else type of gameplay I want to come back. Hmm. I mean, besides combat racing, probably like it would be nice to get more like I don't know if this is that retro, but it would be nice to get more like kind of goofy 3D like just more 3D platformers in general.
Mm,
Because I'm thinking of 3D platformers, and we got Mario Odyssey, Hat in Time, Ukulele,
mhm,
and that's not like crazy. And of course, like Corn Kids, what stands out as like classic 64 gameplay wise platforming.
mhm,
So I would my second wish would be like just more Mario 64 clones
mhm, mhm.
when it comes to the platforming.
And I want more like XCOM like. So I would like to see like more evolution of like that kind of like tactical strategy design.
Mm,
But it's like very hard to I think modernize that, and that's always been I think some of like the push and pull when we talk about these retro games. Like when we talk about someone recreating like a Mario or a Banjo Kazooie, you have that kind of yes. If you're a fan of that, you can just play a game just like it. But it's very hard, I think, to kind of evolve that further and say, can we make a game like that can still appeal to someone who hasn't played those games or who was born
yeah.
in like 2010 or something like that?
Yeah, because also you want to put your own twist on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because like with Robo Maid, that's like action adventure platforming, but with cleaning mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
which I haven't seen done with some indie games, and it's not a bad thing. I've just noticed that sometimes it's just like we're a spiritual successor to that game, but you still want to put like a twist on it. At least that's what I've learned with the gameplay mechanics. So if I did make a third-person shooter, there'd have to be something unique
Mm-hmm.
about it. Or if I made like combat racing, it would need to be same thing. Or like if I made a 3D platformer that's the 64 style rather than like a action adventure platformer, it's like
Mm-hmm.
a pure 3D platformer for a bit lack of a better word. Uh, I need something special about it, which is going to be really hard because there's so many games
Mm-hmm.
and people who are like programmers and level designers are way better at coming up with unique concepts and expanding it
Mm-hmm.
from there. I can sometimes just think about like, oh, I want to make this style. I want to make this art style, and I want to make this type of game because it will look cool. And I have to like make sure and focus on the gameplay first, uh, especially with the team
Yeah.
when when it comes to when it comes to that.
And trying to put the unique spin on it, I think, is one of the more important points that we've seen, especially in the indie scene, over the last like 5 years. Like, speaking like just focusing on shooters, I interviewed David Zemisky and Dave Austry from New Blood, and like when Dust like first came out, like there really weren't like at that level of like a boomer shooter being released. Now,
Mm.
every 2 to 3 weeks, someone is trying to make their own version of Doom, Dusk, or Quake, and
Mm.
a lot of them that I've played are just okay. Like I think for a lot of these games, like people think like Doom is the benchmark that you're trying to reach. No, Doom is just like that's like level one. Like you have to go above and beyond that if you want to get
Mm.
someone excited about your shooter. Just like you have to go above and beyond Mario or Banjo or Ukulele or Banjo and so on.
Mm. Because I mean, I think that was like the whole problem with a ukulele when it came out,
Mm-hmm.
but I could be misremembering it because that's been a while. People were like, "Yeah, it's fine," but people wanted like Hat in Time where it's like, "Oh, it's so good." But no, I definitely agree. You need to put a unique spin on the gameplay. Um, I'm trying to think of games that do that. I mean, when it comes to mine, it's like Mario Odyssey. They took
Mm-hmm.
Mario 64, updated it, and then added this whole new mechanic. Because what players want, they want like when you're making especially a sequel to something, they want like the same thing but a twist on it. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
Mario 64, go to Mario Sunshine. Now there's Flood. I mean, people debate Flood
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Like you're either like I hate Flood or you love Flood and that mechanics in the game. But point still stands. that's what people want. When
Hmm.
franchises go haywire when it comes to gameplay, it's usually they don't innovate or they just do something so radically different to remove what people liked about the game. So it's a weird kind
Hmm.
of like balance you have to do.
Yep.
Um, for previous series, a lot of times they just took what was good about them and just made it bigger and better. But I feel like as indie gamers or indie developers as well, can't really do that much. It's more polished than like making it bigger due to us having small teams and limited time and budgets, and sometimes like indie developers are working like part time, not full time. So
Mm, yep. And if you go too far above and beyond, you just may not be able to stick that landing because we've seen a lot of indie projects unfortunately crash and burn in that respect.
yeah, I mean that's what I've experienced with the itch sanctified game.
Mm.
So
All right. I think we can start to wrap things up here. So, to kind of like for like the end of like podcast wrap up. So the first thing, we are recording this just before Halloween in October. In terms
mhm.
of, I guess, for like Robo Maid, do you have any things like announced or things that you're planning on doing in the coming weeks or months, like for like people, consumers or players watching?
Well, the hopefully I can't say when, but soon we could get like a gameplay trailer dropped, like a
Hmm.
teaser trailer, gameplay trailer, as well as eventually maybe next year a demo drop. Um, other than that, I always try my best to make like you know not just the lore of videos, but the meme videos on the channel. So hopefully I can get something made for Halloween, which you should subscribe uh, to the Mike Motion 83 YouTube channel to help the numbers. So then, like we can grow the Patreon, we can grow like the audience. So we can make this game a hit. 'Cause that's something I was gonna mention. The interesting thing about this game
Hmm.
is that because the YouTube channel came first, then the game came later. We already have started the marketing machine. We just have to keep the hype.
Hmm.
I've not really seen many indie games do this, or at least I think there's like one VR game I saw. It's called like Sushi something.
Hmm.
Uh, I wish I remember that name because that game looks pretty cool. I think it came out just recently, at least as a demo on Steam. Point being, uh, making little animations out of your like uh, indie development is actually pretty good marketing if there's an audience there, and that's
Hmm.
something I'll probably want to use on future projects,
Yep.
like make either meme videos or lore videos. So
Yep.
then, you know, you get a built-in audience of like, oh, I like this. What's gonna happen next?
Yep.
But yeah, that's what's planned. Also, like, I want to make a uh, character Q&A because that would be fun. But there's a lot of like, I want this done, but then things come up with like work or like life that
Hmm.
just because we're all working on this part time. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, expect like new videos coming out hopefully this month. Rather that's Halloween themed or just memes,
Hmm.
and eventually the demo being dropped early next year. But it could be delayed again. It's all very up in the air.
Hmm. So you said a minutes ago that are you hoping to get Road May like tentatively out for 2025?
Uh, some point in 2025, Chapter One out would be
Okay.
nice. Which would be basically uh, it would be like the first two areas. I guess first three: the 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 tutorial dungeon, the mansion dungeon, and yes, I'm using dungeon. I'm using the JRPG kind of terms, and then the city dungeon. which would be like the sewer. So you have the city overworld, and then you go down into the sewer, and there's a whole like dungeon to explore and do puzzles and shooting and shenanigan. Uh, which would be like all of chapter one or season one, whatever you want to call it. That's what I want to get out, and hopefully we can maybe get funding or some positive response, a fundraiser. I don't know, but it's we want the channel to keep growing, the fan base to keep expanding. What I'm really trying to say is people need to make fan art. Tell the fans. I, I need to see like more wholesome fan art of the maid eating cake.
All
Yeah.
right. So here's the other question I always like to ask any developers, put you on the spot a little bit. Do you have any ideas or future projects beyond Robo Maid?
Uh that's a hard one because I'm currently leaned like all my like energies into the Robo Maid. It's been into it for like years. Because Robo Maid, the concept goes back for years and years in the back of my head. It's not like I came up with it yesterday.
Mhm.
Like, you know, be you know, liking anime and then 3D platforming, it all kind of just evolved naturally. But I would say I would want to help out my friends'
Mhm.
projects out, and if I like, how to explain this? If my if they like if my friends' projects ever get off the ground, and this would be some of them would be their dream games. I would want to make like a third person sci-fi shooter or like uh how do I say this without being not being cryptic? Uh some sort of like RPG fantasy game. I think that's vague enough. Would be also I would be down because I'm thinking about I can help out my yeah, like these are like people I've known for years in the indie game scene in like San Jose, Oakland, San
Mhm.
Francisco, the Bay Area. So it's also a lot because I'm directing the project and taking a break from directing and my own kind of vision. Because some of those guys are helping me with this game. It'd be nice to invest into other people's games. So I think it'd be cool to make some sort of like sci-fi game, maybe with some like tactical stealth to it, kind of like Metal Gear or like what is it, Chaos Theory for like the Xbox 360
Mhm.
would be kind of cool. I like those games. The problem is I'm terrible at Metal Gear, but yet I play them. So uh, yeah, some sort of JRPG or turn-based RPG fantasy would be that would be the next on my agenda. Uh, or I guess combat racing, but none of my friends want to make it. That's only me.
All
um, that's about future plans.
right, sounds good. So, in terms of like social media and places people can find, obviously you have the YouTube channel. Cool, link that down
Mm.
below. Anything else in terms of Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, whatever that you like to mention?
Uh, I don't have a blue sky yet because the Twitter apocalypse just happened, and I just realized I found that out like yesterday. But yeah, I do have a Twitter. I don't really use it that much, but I do have a Twitter. I think it's like Mike Motion 2 or something. Uh, as well as a Patreon, um, Patreon, uh, which is it should be Mike Motion just like that, but it might be Mike Motion 83. But either way, I got probably would link that because if more people subscribe to the Patreon, it helps the game and helps the YouTube channel. Um, you know, so consider consider doing that. giving money for the project inadvertently. And besides that, that's about it.
Okay. So I guess my last question for you then is: you have anything you'd like to say to the fans of the game, fans of your YouTube channel, anything to take us out on?
Uh, uh, I'm honored that you guys are like interested into the Robo Maid like YouTube series as well as wanting there to be a game. And without you guys, I probably would have just made that one-off video, which is I think it's like Mary gets rewarded or something, which was just gonna, like I said earlier, it's just gonna be a one-off. But then it took off, so then I kept going, and then it exploded with the church video. So I really appreciate you guys. Um, yeah, just make fan art. I need the fan art. I need the wholesome fan art. That's my only complaint with you guys. No, but kidding aside, thanks so much, and let's keep this train going until the full game gets released because it's gonna, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but it's gonna get wild. It's gonna get fascinating.
Yep, well, it has been a pleasure hanging out with you tonight, Mike, and it was great meeting the game at MagWest, and I
Mm.
do wish you the best of luck for uh, finishing up this year and where the project will go in 2025.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the chance for the interview.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I'm always looking for guests to come on, so I guess it's time for my end of video promotion. So, for those of you watching, thank you so much for tuning in, do the YouTubing stuff. If you are a developer working on a game and want to come on and chat about it or chat about game dev, I'm always looking for guests. Be sure to check out all the copies of my books. You'll find links down below if you're interested in platformers, shooters, strategies, whatever. Be sure to check them out. And with that said, I'll include links to Mike's YouTube channel, so be sure to visit that. And I think with that, we'll end things here. So again, Mike, thanks for reaching out. And if you're free in the future, we can always ramble and talk more about classic games and designs in the future.
Yeah, maybe when Rebel Maid Chapter 1 or like the whole game comes out. Because I was going to say, this was so much fun, I'll gladly come back on.
All right. Well, with that said, everyone, thanks again for tuning in. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where you examine the art and science of games. And until next time, have a great night.